6:05 now. New this morning. After a little back and forth late last night, a federal appeals court has ruled that President Trump can keep control of the roughly 4,000 National Guard troops on the ground in Los Angeles right now.
And Aisha, that ruling coming just hours after a lower court ruled that Trump's move to, quote, federalize the California National Guard was illegal since they say he did not get state approval. This is also coming as anti-ICE protests are continuing all across the country. In fact, this morning you can see in this video from yesterday scenes out in Chicago, New Jersey, Seattle, and Indianapolis. Those demonstrations started in Los Angeles 1 week ago and quickly ignited into a national movement, calling attention to the sweeping ICE raids at workplaces across the city there. Well, since last Friday, at least 330 immigrants have been arrested in Southern California alone.
And we are seeing these arrests happen all over Georgia as well. We brought you the stories of a grandmother from Macon, an Alpharetta newlywed, an adult and college student, and so many other families torn apart because of ICE detainments. Homeland Security Investigations, which is an agency within DHS, says they plan to continue their raids. It says at least 100 immigrants are arrested in Georgia every single day.
Well, protests on immigration crackdowns will continue tomorrow, including a protest right here in Atlanta.
It all coincides with the national movement that has been scheduled for weeks, being called the No Kings Protest. 11 Alive's Karis Belger following everything you need to know from Emory Village. That is where one of those protests is scheduled to happen.
All right, so Karis, we know that from watching these protests, they've been growing, it seems, by the day. What can we expect out there tomorrow?
Well, the protest is scheduled for tomorrow at noon. Organizers are urging people to come out and make their voices heard, especially because there are some members of immigrant communities who will not be doing so out of fear of being detained themselves. All of these are part of a nationwide series of, quote, No Kings protests. They're happening across the country. They're scheduled to take place and coincide with President Donald Trump's military parade in Washington, D.C. Over the last few days, there have been demonstrations across the country in cities like Seattle, San Antonio, and Denver in response to Trump's move to mobilize the National Guard and Marines in Los Angeles. But at the root of these demonstrations are concerns over increased arrests and deportations in immigrant communities.
For us now, the challenge is how do we go to the community, right? Understanding that there's a segment of the community that might be fearful.
Now, these protests did not start with the events in Los Angeles. A lot of them began just a few weeks ago as we saw an increase in arrests and detainments and, of course, immigration and customs enforcement activity throughout Metro Atlanta. I'll have more on that in the next half hour. In Chamblee, I'm Karis Belger, 11 Alive News.
All right, Karis, thank you so much. Passion behind these causes. We will keep following it throughout the weekend. In some cities and states around the country, they've already deployed their National Guard ahead of tomorrow's protests and declared states of emergency. Atlanta is not one of those cities, at least for now. But Georgia Attorney General Chris Carr did issue this statement earlier this week saying that they will defend the right to protest peacefully, but will not hesitate to bring domestic terrorism charges for those who earn it.